Hi, everyone. Welcome to Thanks for Sharing. I'm your host, Jackie Pack, and I have with me today as a guest on the podcast, Gary Katz. Welcome, Gary.
Hi, thank you for having me, Jackie.
Yeah, so Gary is a fellow CSAT, and I think I mentioned to you in an email when I reached out to ask you to be a guest on the podcast that somewhere, I'm not sure where, maybe it's the listserv. I'm aware of you, which was helpful when I saw the topic that you were going to present on at our recent symposium.
Yeah,
And I was excited when I saw the title and was just like, I'm going to this one. And so I wanted to have you on just to explore the topic a little bit more. But before we get started on that, introduce yourself and tell me and my listeners a little bit more about you.
sure. I'm Gary Katz. I'm a licensed clinical social worker based out of New York, but licensed in a variety of states and have a practice called the Center for Intimacy Recovery, which probably, I don't know, scientifically it's a guess, but 60 to 70% of the practice focuses on sex addiction, betrayal, trauma, and the other percentage of the practice primarily focuses on sex therapy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, we look at it all through a lens of intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
um, and um, ways to avoid intimacy. And then the other thing I would say is that we also have a program that we just recently started for therapists. So if you have listeners who are therapists, speaking of intimacy, just out of my own experience, I found that, this work is so meaningful. It's a calling for myself. I'm sure for you too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's isolating. Even though we're with people all day, every day, it's lonely, it's hard. And I found myself, struggling with that about a year ago, probably often many times, but recently about a year ago. And I spend 2 days in New York City where I see clients in person, and then the other 3 days of the week at home outside of New York City. And just conversations with other clinicians led to realizing that I wasn't the only one who felt kind of isolated working all day with clients and helping them. And we've started like get-togethers around New York City and other places for clinicians, actually for mental health professionals, because I think that like people in administrative roles in our field also
Mm-hmm.
struggle with it, psychiatrists, nurse too, but places for mental health professionals to get together to connect and not just learn for CEs or not just have a networking dinner sponsored by a treatment center, but to actually be people and connect on a human level, even in a playful way. So like we started a pickleball league for mental health professionals here in New York. We did a salsa lesson. And what I'm most excited about, want to just mention here in case any clinicians or mental health professionals are listening, is that we're having a weekend summer camp for mental health professionals at a summer camp in the Catskill Mountains in September. That's just an opportunity to hang out with other therapists, coaches, clinicians, mental health professionals, have fun, connect, and to kind of like feed your soul that way.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
That's, I think that it can be an isolating profession, and taking care of ourselves by connecting with other clinicians who, are in a similar space. I think we're somewhat of a unique breed.
Yeah, and we talk about like you hear it quoted all the time, and I'm sure but anyone listening, I bet 99% of your listeners know, whether they're clinicians or not, the idea like the opposite of addiction is connection, and we say it all the time and all the time, and yet we're so isolated as
Yes,
healers and mental health care providers, and so like it's not we have to walk the walk.
yes, yeah,
And
absolutely.
and connecting to one of the why I'm here is like in men especially, because we're socialized to not have, so many men do not have healthy connections or just like a vibrant social life. Like either have whoever their spouse or partner's friend's husband is or
Uh-huh.
that
Yeah,
they can tolerate for a night or whatever, or they have
yeah,
work friends, but or they have their friends from high school or college, but they don't. It's really hard. I think there's like a lacking for many men to have a rich emotional social life. And I know for myself, I work at it. Like I have locked into my schedule at least three people every week, three friends that I meet with virtually that I don't get to see in person because of where they live
mm,
now. But like it's necessary. And like when we're working on intimacy, like so my practice, for example, has 13 groups a week because that like it creates intimacy and friendship. And so
Right.
sometimes when we're working with couples or part of a couple and it's so hard, it's so raw, and it's like it's the primary relationship. Sometimes one of the side ways to get to that intimacy building skills is by helping people helping men on my end have a richer, intimate life with other guys and
Hmm.
stuff like
Yeah, absolutely. I find that as well, with men's groups and helping them figure out how to connect. And then, they really value that aspect, but a lot of them are hesitant to join group work, even though it's
that. Oh, it's
very
terrible.
powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. It's something I see in this field that different than you see in the substance abuse field, like where you send people to whether it's a 12-step program like AA and they're
Hmm.
told call 3 people a day. You send someone to a 12-step program for sex or love addiction and they don't do that one thing. They'll do everything else
Hmm.
because I think I was gonna say the animal is different, but that sounds pejorative to the nature, the typical client that we get is different and they're more intimacy avoidant. And so they would rather do a workbook
Hmm.
to get to have coffee with a friend. I'm
Yes.
I'm over exaggerating grossly, but which is why I'd rather have them go play or go hang out than do a workbook,
Hmm.
or have a
Yes.
process group over a workbook. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So if people are interested in your area in the meetups, or if they're interested in this summer camp, how do they get in touch with you? How do they register?
that's great. Thank you. Yeah, so our website is intimacyrecovery.com. We have a page there for this. We call it Therapy Tribe, just to differentiate a little. And there's a page for it there. There's an Instagram Therapy Tribe Instagram account, which has all the information also and a link tree on it. But yeah, or they're welcome to email me directly, Gary Katz, which is my name, Katz, Gary Katz at intimacyrecovery.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thanks. So let's get into the topic that we're going to be talking about and the topic that you presented on at Symposium. I am interested as we get into this topic, what prompted you or what brought you into exploring this topic? And do you want to say what you presented on, or do you want me to?
I'm happy to.
Okay.
I'm happy to. I presented on how men's fear of women impacts the relationships,
Mhm.
and specifically at the symposium, I talked about how it impacts healing from betrayal trauma for a couple,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's where I see it a lot. We have all these other things that we like, empathy or other things that we try to focus on. But I really think that underneath the struggle for empathy, because I think a lot of these men are empathetic for many other people, or even their
Mhm.
spouse or partner. Like if the person's wife or partner had a fight with their mother, they could be empathetic. But there's something that gets in the way, which is a lot of shame also. But oops, I hit the button. But I think this also. So it's really about how men's fear of women or fears of women can impact their relationship and healing from betrayal trauma too.
Yeah. Your title was much more succinct. So I'm going to say that because I do
Okay, good.
like,
Thank you.
I do like titles. There are books I have bought that I did not read, but I bought because of the title. So the title was Why Men Are So Afraid of Women, which I was
Okay,
like,
there you go. Sorry. I
that,
guess
yes.
why I started.
You're like, I don't remember what I put down for the title.
Yeah,
Um,
that's very funny.
yeah. And so, they email out to those who are registered for the symposium, they email out like a little highlight. Here's a topic and a speaker that's presenting on this. And when I saw it, I just thought, oh, I'm absolutely going to this one. I don't know which ones I'll be missing, but I'm going to this one. So I thought you did a great job. I had, two of my colleagues came with me, were at Symposium with me, and I had said, I'm going to this one. And they said, like, are you worried about the topic? And I said, I'm just curious about the topic. Like, I
Oh.
might get mad during it, but I'll be fine. I can take care of myself.
Wait, get mad. Why? What do you mean?
I mean, I wasn't thinking that it was going to be like female bashing, but
Oh,
I think that's what they were kind of like, I don't know about going to that one. And I was just like, oh, I'm
huh.
going. I like
Yeah.
this is a fascinating title and not a typical one for symposium. And I thought you did an amazing job.
Oh, thank you.
I
It
really
doesn't
enjoyed it.
surprise me that your friends had that reaction, or maybe you too. Because I got more emails about when I presented this elsewhere about this topic than any other topic I've ever presented about. And I get
Okay.
things like that, like, what are you talking about? Men's fear of women? Women are, how many men are abused by women? Women are, domestic ranging from a psychological abuse to domestic violence. How could you even talk about men's fear of women when you're ignoring women's fear of men? I get
Mm-hmm.
those emails. I get emails like, dude, way to go. Finally speaking up for the manosphere. I get those. And I'm actually not addressing either of those. That's not what it's
Right.
about, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
but it was informative to me when I started getting those emails. So I'm not surprised to what you hear. But I also wonder, like, and I don't know who your friends are. I don't think that ITAP would let somebody submit a presentation
Right.
that's going to
Exactly.
bash anyone. Hopefully, like what I mean,
Right.
that's how can we help people for bashing them? So yeah,
I
it's
mean, I
interesting.
did say, I don't think ITAP's going to let this slide by if it's going to, if it is going to make half of their population angry. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a very catching title to me and one that I was just like, I'm going. I don't know what the person's talking about, but I'm going.
It's yeah. I mean, like I actually came up with an idea that I wanted to talk about next symposium, and the
Mm,
title's more provocative, which is something like, "Is sex addiction even real?" Question mark. And then underneath is like, is there legitimate value for some of the arguments against it? Because there are some
mm,
good points
mm-hmm,
that they make that are worth addressing when they argue against sex addiction. And my partner said they'll never let that go. They'll never let
mm,
that topic fly. Because I had whatever, it's a longer story, but I had somebody actually over, um, I'm not going to go into it.
yeah.
Yeah.
We have a little bit here in Utah, which surprises some people, but in Utah, we have kind of a caustic sometimes situation between sex therapists and CSATs. And I
That's
don't,
exactly what I'm talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't understand that, but it's a real thing. I've had that, um,
Yeah, no, I understand it.
yeah.
It's because I'm also a sex therapist, and it comes from the
Mm-hmm.
world of in sex therapy that was to try to take away shame from sex that was so,
Right.
so much shame is pervasive, and so they worked for before, even before sex addiction was a name, they were working to take the shame out of sex. And so when they started to sex addiction started to evolve as an idea, that's what some people in that world heard, that, oh, you're
Uh-huh.
shaming sex again. And then what happens is, one of my instructors, Barry McCarthy, who's written a lot of he wrote The Guide to Better Sex and other books, but I had him do a training for my staff because he's really smart, and he's like, it's like the political parties, like the extremes of the political parties don't hear each other and they other each other. So in the
Mm-hmm.
sex therapy world, they're like, oh, all sex addiction people are shame based, and they, which is not true. And then there are
Right.
people in the sex addiction world, which is like all sex therapists are hedonists and everything goes and
Yes.
whatever.
Right.
So like the othering of the other camp just creates such a cartoonish version, and then they're not listening to each other. And so he's
Mm-hmm.
like, there's going to be people who just will never listen to the other side. And I think Alex Katahakis was the first person from the CSAT community to really bridge that gap between
Yeah.
sex
Yeah.
addiction world and the sex therapy world.
Yeah. And that wasn't an easy bridge that she forged when she talks about that. I'm like, wow, that's a little brutal, but okay. Good
Yeah,
job.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, back to my question.
Sure.
What got you exploring this topic?
What got me to explore this topic is a combination of what I was seeing in my office. So, for example, I would have men who were terrified to say something to their partner in a session. And I don't mean like a big secret. I mean, like, I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
Things,
Uh-huh.
like,
Yeah.
something like that. Like, I don't mean
Mm-hmm.
like a big disclosure. They were like scared to say, like, I don't like having your mother stay with us for 6 months a year. It's things like that, like,
Uh-huh.
which are right or wrong are understandable feelings, right? But
Right. Right.
I had men in my office say, when maybe I had a session with them alone and I was encouraging them to voice something to their partner and they're like, I don't feel safe. And like the guy's like 6'4", 250 pounds, and she's like 5'2", 110 pounds or 20, like, and she's like, what? You don't feel safe? Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And they're like quaking in their shoes. I see it I would see it between, I think some of the results of this fear are some of the underlying causes for acting out sexually for some
Mm-hmm.
people. Um, I see it in a way that men will go to this victim position sometimes of like, oh, I can't do anything right. Everything I do is wrong. I think that's part of the fear. It's one of the fears. And it comes out with betrayed couples, like when we talk about like Omar Manuel will talk about most of the trauma happens at from discovery on because of all the gaslighting, denial, the defensiveness, and all these
Mm-hmm.
things that happen. And so much of the ruptures that happen in the relationship happen. There's definitely even before discoveries, but post discovery because of the defensiveness, the inability of the man to handle their partner's pain, to tolerate it. And I think, yes, there's a struggle for empathy at times, often fueled by shame. But I think that some of these fears play a role in that too. And so trying to understand, and I did for me too. So I saw these things in myself, ranging from I could be standing at the refrigerator. I remember one time years ago, I went and opened the doors of the refrigerator and I'm looking inside and it's like, stand like many people just stand there like, ooh. And my partner at the time said, what are you looking for? And I felt my body tense up, like, why is she trying to control me?
Mm.
And that reaction is like, what is going on for there? Or even more times with my, current partner, and she would say things to me and express her pain. And my reactions would baffle me. Like, and even if I just spent an entire day back to back talking to clients about how to talk to their partner or their spouse and to react, da da da, and then I'm still having these reactions like, what is going on? And so it actually, and I think I might have mentioned this at the symposium where you were, but like it wrecked me. Like preparing this talk for me, like
Mm.
involved me looking at myself in ways that I don't know, some other talks might not didn't land or hit, even if it was me. For some
Mm-hmm.
reason, this, well, I mean, I know the reasons, but it hit really like core stuff,
Yeah.
like deep things. So it came from my own experiences, which a lot of the work that I do does.
Right.
And it came from what I started to see in my offices. And then the other ways I see it in the office too is like, because nobody ever calls up in a consultation and said, I'd like to come in for therapy because I'm scared of my wife.
Right.
Never happened. Not in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Or couples never say, well, we want to come in because he's so terrified of me. Like if it's a couple, they're coming in for communication, conflict, for our field, betrayal or infidelity, right? Like they're coming in for, or no, not having sex or not good dynamics. And sometimes these are some of the underlying things that are creating these surface presenting problem issues. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's how I see it. And the other thing I would say is that the other place that I see it is the impact on women, and this might be true for same-sex couples, but I'm talking here primarily heterosexual couples
Yeah.
because of the dynamic specifically. But the impact on women is that the men's fear of the women, and then the way they compensate for that is so then it impacts women like they're lonely, they're
Mm-hmm.
bewildered, they're hurt, they get it might come out through an acting out behavior that causes betrayal. They twist themselves to be different or better to please their husband or boyfriend
Mm-hmm.
or whatever partner. So like when I've given this talk, I'll ask if the men in the room if they identify with these feelings, a show of hands to see how many might. And I'll usually ask the women if they identify being like getting the impact from this.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
most women raise, if not every woman raises their hand. They may
Yeah.
not name it as this, but at the end, when they start to see like this is part of what's going on that cause, oh, this is why this discussion went this way, or this is why
Mm-hmm.
this defensiveness was there, or this is why there's like super independence and like not willing to kind of be more relational.
Right.
I think these are some of the underlying things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've kind of talked around this, but let's just for the listeners specify when you're talking about fear, why men are afraid of women? What fear specifically are you talking about?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot, but I would say seven primary ones. The fear of being controlled or dominated by a woman, fear of being entrapped by women, fear of failing to protect them, like I can't keep her safe, or I need to keep her safe. I need to provide for her financially, which is a form of safety.
Mm-hmm.
Um, fear of women's emotions, like, oh, there's too much feeling, like, and then
Yeah.
I'll go into each one afterwards, but fear
Okay.
of being inadequate with women,
Mm.
whether as a partner or sexually, or as I'm not a good husband, or, I'm never good enough. That thing I said before, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
not good enough. Fear of being abandoned by a woman,
Yeah.
and fear of being feminine.
Yeah.
So those are like the seven ones. I'm happy. Do you want me to
Yeah.
extrapolate?
Yeah. Let's
Okay.
expand on those. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So like,
Mhm.
uh, I think the test about feeling controlled by women is have a man drive and have a woman tell him where to drive. Right there. It's like, for me, it's like, I literally feel controlled. I'm not saying that's her, it's actually not her intention,
Right.
her intention is safety. Her intention is to like help me. And I'm just speaking about myself. I don't want to speak for all men, but most guys I speak to identify with, like, watch out over there. Why are you going here? Slow down here. It's like the tension just mounts. I think
Mm-hmm.
that I think having GPSs in most cars has helped or saved many relationships. It's like
Right.
God's gift to couples, or now we fight over who's on their phone more instead, I think. But so I think that, or, how many times has a woman said to a man, like, oh, you're going to wear that, like right before you leave?
Mm-hmm.
And then the man internalizes it as criticism, but also like, you can't tell me what I'm going to do. You can't
Right.
control me, things like that. So like these comments that are meant to be suggestive, meant to be
Helpful.
helpful,
Yeah.
loving, they come in through this lens of you're trying to control me.
Mm-hmm.
For some men, obviously we're
Yeah.
stereotyping, but I think, yeah, the fear of being entrapped by women, it's the whole thing of like fear of commitment. Um, Looking at marriage and being in a relationship is like missing out on life, right?
Okay.
Like surrendering. Even some of the terms that we have, like well, I'll give you an example. I have a friend here. He used to be the assistant head of police in our town, also an exercise trainer. So we were working out together, and he had this T-shirt on that had like a ball and chain, like you would put against around a prisoner's leg.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, is that from some police function? And he's like, oh no, it's my brother-in-law's bachelor party.
Oh, yes.
And
Yep.
I was like, what a mess. What a mess.
Right.
It's like we're celebrating you're now about to be locked in slavery or imprisoned.
Mm-hmm.
But right, like, and just to clarify, like his brother-in-law voluntarily got married,
Right.
was involved in the process,
Uh-huh.
initiated a proposal asking this woman to spend her life with him.
Right.
Yet it and it's not unique, but I think it's a funny example, but it gets framed as imprisonment, surrender, right? And so
Mm-hmm. Loss of
I
freedom.
loss of freedom. And when you think about like the American cowboy, he's like the epitome of the American male image. Like he's alone, he's not tied down. There's a song I
Mm-hmm.
played that should have been a cowboy by Toby
Yep.
Keith, right? Like he's not tied down. No one's gonna hold him down. Instead, he gets to sleep outside with his dog and his horse, which is like,
Right. And
like
not shower for days.
not shower for days, have to be covered in dust and smell like manure. But that's, like it's a romanticized, dumb version. And if you think about it, there's research done that men's lives improve when they're in a relationship
Mm-hmm.
or they get
Right.
married. So they're, go into a bachelor pad, generally, they're filthy,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't have to tell most women what a men's bachelor bathroom looks like or
Right.
feels like, right? Like, you know, um, their living conditions improve, their health improves, they have less chance of depression,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, they have a better sex life, they have to live longer. But
Right.
even though facts show that a man's life improves by being in a relationship with a woman, culturally we still look at it like, oh, finally gave up, his life is over, he's
Right.
getting and so it's such a distortion.
Right.
So I think it's connected to this fear of being entrapped. So as a way to push it back, like I can't be trapped, we're going to create this thing, this false image of like freedom when we're single.
Mm-hmm.
And then even like I think the idea of the man cave, for example, right? A man
Yeah.
has one room where she has no authority, and I get to have like the ugly sign from my apartment as a bachelor, and I get to have like it's not as nice as the rest of the house. Generally, a man cave
Mm-hmm.
is not the nicest room in the house, right? Like
Right. Right.
I don't have to have any fluffy pillows on my couch or on my lazy boy. And like, and my uncle, once my uncle Alan said this to me as he was making fun of it because he understood it, but he's like, years ago, he's like, Gary, your Aunt Dana is in charge of the whole house. But I have this one tray on top of my dresser. I can put whatever I want there. She can't tell me anything to do. Like he was laughing and mocking
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what it is. It's like, who's really in charge? You're not going to tell me what to do. I get my own space. And so I think that's part of the fear. Given the field that we're in, I had a wonderful, a client I worked with for many years, and he shared with me he was in his first real serious relationship, moving into engagement, and he said exactly what we're talking about, that getting married feels like a concession, and he was working to undo this thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it was still such a deep-seated belief. What did he do? Had a bachelor party, did things on his bachelor party, blew out, like the engagement got canceled.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. Like, so if you really believe that marriage is a concession and you're losing out by getting married on some level, you're probably
Mm-hmm.
going to do things that manifest that belief. This was an extreme example, but
Right.
in the relationship also, like how a man might relate within the relationship is going to be annoyed when things are asked of him because he's feeling like he's giving something up.
Right. Right.
Versus, you know, years ago, I had a woman I dated who was upset at me about something. And she's like, "Do you not realize that I'm the prize?"
Mm.
And she was right. She was the prize, but I wasn't realizing it. But she was, so I hear that phrase a lot from her, and I share it with clients. But like, are you treating the person like you're surrendered and giving, like sacrificing to be with them, or are
Right.
they the prize? And it's going to show how you show up in your relationship.
Yeah. Well, and there
Um,
is that idolization of bachelor men, single men.
yes.
But if you're actually like, if they are in therapy, if you're talking to them, they're not that happy. They're not, they're not like, this is the best life I ever wanted.
Yeah,
No,
like
they're trying to date. They're trying to find
yeah,
the right
yeah.
person.
Well, the same reason I've asked most of the groups that we run, if they're men who are already in a relationship and let's say they've been discovered
Mm-hmm.
and now they are clawing their way back to stay in the relationship. I'm like, guys, you all had an out.
Right.
She was ready to kick you out, or she did, and now you're working your way back in. Why not take it?
Mm-hmm.
What's your reason that you're fighting? You're willing to like, you know, eat humble pie, learn a whole new way of life, do a lot of therapy, pay a lot of money probably for therapy. It's
Mm-hmm.
not cheap. And have, discomfort when here you are. If you want to have a variety of relationships or anything you want, or here's your opening. And we know, right? Most men stay,
Right.
right? They fight to stay. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think this is part of it, but I think the other reason is because the need for secure connection is greater than the need for excitement or adventure or variety or compulsion or things like that. Like whatever
Mm-hmm.
that is,
Mm-hmm.
the need for like structured, secure, healthy attachment is much greater for
Yeah.
all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is a good thing.
Thank God. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see what else is here. The fear of women's emotions, which is, I always joke that's how our field got invented. All
Mm-hmm.
these men sending women to Freud to solve their hysteria in
Right.
Vienna or whatever, right? Like we can't deal with these women who are like fainting from emotions. Well,
Right.
he later discovered that most of them had a history of sexual abuse too,
Mm-hmm.
trauma. But you know, it's the fear of women's emotions manifests in like pathologizing women
Hmm.
and you're too emotional, calm down. I mean, there's so many phrases that some of them I don't want to say it on air, but like that describe women's emotions or when they have their period and putting,
Right.
like there's so many things that kind of pathologize a woman and her feelings and um minimize them.
Hmm.
And even parents, right? Like will shut down a girl differently than a boy for being
Oh,
too,
yeah. Yes.
yeah. So
Well,
I
and
think,
and I usually talk to clients and will say, like from very, very young ages, we are treating the genders differently. And, I'll use the example. Let's take like an 18-month-old child. They've mastered walking, running, they're not so great at. We're watching them kind of run down the sidewalk. They fall, they skin their knee, they start crying. And then I'll say, let's say this is a girl. How do we respond?
right,
And they're
right,
like, oh, we're like, come here, let me give you a
right,
kiss.
right,
And I'm like, yeah, we invite them into relationship. We're telling them you need a connection here.
right,
And what do we do if it's a little boy? And they're
right,
like, oh, we're like, you're tough, bud. Jump up. You're fine.
right, right. Stop
And I'm
crying.
like, yeah. And then we're surprised that there's issues here.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I would say also that it's not just what's his name? Tony Porter has a great video on YouTube he calls the man box.
Mm-hmm.
And Roman Manwala uses it in his course and in his trainings, but he talks that example. He has his own kids, a boy and a
Mm-hmm.
girl, and like they same thing. They both fell down and came in crying, and he caught himself responding differently.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think also that it's not just sadness that we shut down women or that men have fear of with women, even like joy. Like I would have a man who said, "I can't stand it when my wife is laughing so hard and is so happy." He's like, "I'm happy." It would like make him uncomfortable, that level of emotion.
Mm.
And I think that it's because of what the example you gave with the little boy, like, come on, bud, stop it. Da, da, da. It teaches, right? We're teaching boys to not show weakness, to
Right.
not showing feelings equates to showing weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And that also includes joy.
Right.
You're right. And I used to be I think I shared this. I was a teacher for many years before doing this, and I'd see little kids walking down the hall, and the little boys would be like silly and ballerina dancing and tippy toeing. And at a certain age, they're like, "What's up?" They stop doing
Mm-hmm.
that, right? They stop
Right.
even joy. And if you see a man or a boy show too much joy, people say, "Oh, what are you gay?"
Mm-hmm.
Right
Right.
away. Like, are you feminine? Are you right? So
Right.
it's not just don't show sadness. Masculinity commands, so to speak, men to disconnect from all feelings except anger and sexual desire. Those are okay to
Yes.
show in the
Yep.
world.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, when the fear of women's emotions is also, like how many guys get weirded out when they're at a wedding with their wife or their girlfriend, and she's like, "Come on, honey, let's go dance." And the wife, she's such a good mood, and the guy's like, he's like gets nervous
Uh-huh.
without a drink or two, maybe he can't dance, but he's like not just uncomfortable to dance, he's uncomfortable with how happy his wife is. Like it makes
Yeah.
him, even though in his heart we know like they're happy their wife is, or the partner is
Mm-hmm.
happy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and also I think with sexual desire, where there's like a study, like I think it's 15% of the time, if a woman has like strong sexual desire, 15% of men actually lose their desire.
Yeah.
They get scared, and so women then get caught in a bind. Like I'm not sexual enough, but if
Mm-hmm.
I'm too sexual, not just what we think of women, but like even their own partner, it intimidates them the amount of feeling involved. Because what it
Mm-hmm.
does is we know from our work that feelings are contagious.
Right.
So like we sit with people all day, even with all the boundaries we have, it's like they come on and like we
Mm-hmm.
need to like shake them off. But you sit with you're next to someone who's angry on the bus or in a store, you can feel their anger.
Mm-hmm.
So with men who have had to like, using IFS, internal family systems language of like exiling almost all their feelings, being around someone who's mirroring all these feelings, it like starts to make them rumble deep
Right.
down.
Right.
And so that's the fear. Is part of the fear of women's emotions is like, oh, they're going to bring out my feelings and I can't handle that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, and
instead, yeah,
I think you mentioned this in symposium, or maybe you said something and then I combined a thought. I tend to do that a lot. And then
Yeah.
I usually quote that person. And then sometimes they're like, I didn't say that. And I'm like, oh, well, you did in my head. But you were also, I think you were kind of talking about this thing, men's fear of women's emotions. And also kind of saying like men also know that women dominate here, or they're a lot more comfortable with the emotional space and
Yep.
communicating there and
Yep.
talking to
Yeah.
friends there and just being open emotionally. And so, when they're wanting that connection with their male spouse, it's like he knows he's going in inadequate.
Exactly. They're not on a level playing field,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because boys and girls are socially raised different, like we just talked about.
Yeah.
So all these things, not just like girls are cared for more with more patience, but also most of their books, much of the focus is on how to solve social relational problems,
Mm-hmm.
in friendships.
Right.
And then boys are about how to succeed at sports or how to vanquish evil or whatever, or how to drive a Tonka truck or something. But
Uh-huh.
so when they all meet, and these men who are about doing, which is how they're raised, which is fine, their stomachs, get butterflies, and these things, people smell really good and make them feel all tingly. It feels good, but then they're having two different conversations, which is that famous thing of like, she's like, I just want you to understand how I feel, not tell me how to fix it. That's part of
Mm-hmm.
the same thing.
Right.
So I think that men who don't have that emotional, I call it like emotional literacy,
Mm-hmm.
then they're on this playing field where they don't know the game.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know, so they want to fix it. They don't know how to just sit with the feelings. And I mean that, you probably deal with that like I do too, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
helping a man. I think it would be a relief to be told you don't have to fix it. You just have to let her know you understand and let her know you
Right.
hear her. And the truth is, if I would use myself as a barometer, I know that intellectually and from my training and all the work, and I know it from my experience. I am batting, I think, 0 for 1,000,000 of every time I make the suggestion to do something to fix it. It's
Mm-hmm.
never worked. Not once. Not once. And so, but yet, even though I know that, that's my first thought when my
Mm-hmm.
partner shares her feelings with me is like, oh, if I can help her to see it differently or do this thing, then she won't feel that way. And then I've helped her and I love her and I want her to feel better. And so there's something so ingrained to do that, even when we know not to do
Mm-hmm.
it, like it still pops up for me. Like every
Mm-hmm.
cell in my body, I've learned to treat it like my brain's lying to me. Like, because every cell in my body thinks, Gary, say this, it'll make her feel better. Still. So I just ignore that
Mm-hmm.
thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so being on this playing field feels and so sometimes, well, what do you do when you feel less than, right? Like when you have it's like a shame reaction on, and if you're in the world of feelings and you feel less than, so your shame reaction is either attack others, be
Mm-hmm.
defensive, be critical, or attack yourself, put yourself down, or avoid, like shut down
Mm-hmm.
or distract. So all these kind of defense responses come out when you because of this fear of being inadequate.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say it also shows up the fear of being inadequate, like for men, when you hear them, oh, she's out of my league. I'll never get her. Like you hear
Mm-hmm.
guys when they're dating talk about that. Or it comes out with sex too. Like, you probably get this with some of your clients. I get it with mine. As soon as a man has an issue where he's worried about his ability to function sexually, like
Mm-hmm.
panic sets in. They won't go to the doctor for cardiac arrest, but if there's an
Right.
erectile issue, they are there that morning. They're in the urgent
Right.
care. Now they're on an app ordering pills to help them with that. So like the fear of being inadequate sexually is a huge fear also, because it's not just is my body not helping me, it's also like, what will she think of me? I'll be inadequate to her.
Mm-hmm.
I won't,
Right. Well, and they're not wrong. Often women don't respond well to that and
right.
take it very personal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's one of two responses, right? Like either it's you or it's me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So hopefully if a woman is secure, hopefully she can feel like, oh, it's not, it's you, it's not me, maybe.
Yeah.
And also be compassionate. But if a woman is not fully secure with her body, like 99% of humans, if not
Hmm.
100% of humans, who is secure with their body, right?
Right.
Then of course she's going to wonder if like, oh, maybe you're not attracted to me. And if there's been a history of betrayal, which means choosing someone else over choosing me,
Hmm.
and then that, we know with couples after they're re-engaging sexually after a history of betrayal, like sometimes very often men have erectile issues because they're trying to have emotionally connected sex,
Right.
and then all of a sudden like their heart shuts down their penis and
Hmm.
they're having these issues, and it's so important to explain that to couples because otherwise the betrayed partner is going to feel like, oh, maybe you're not attracted. It's going to hit that wound.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
already been, it's such a profound wound anyway. It's going to just act, open it right away, which is
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there are, when you're talking about male sexuality, there's a lot of myths, I think, that have endured around male sexuality, and even males believe the myths.
Like, what do you mean?
Like that men will have sex anytime, anywhere, with
Oh,
anyone, under any circumstances, and it's going to work.
yeah.
Like,
Right.
that's just not
Yeah.
realistic.
Yeah. It's not realistic. It's also not realistic to think that if you're 50, you're 20.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And like that's where a lot of the sex therapy stuff comes in. And that guy I
Hmm.
quoted before, my teacher, he came up with the idea, the phrase good enough sex,
Hmm.
and helping couples as they get older and there's different, whether it's erectile issues for the man or other issues for the woman's body, like we have to incorporate how bodies are responding, like because we have this image, especially for men, that your body's going to respond like you did when you were 20,
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
command, ready for sex anytime. And as you get older, that's not true. But yeah, the way
Well,
you
and
said,
and as women get older, we don't want sex with 20-year-old men.
no, right. Also,
Like,
right. Yes,
no thanks.
right. Right. Agreed. Yes. Yeah. I don't know that. I mean, I know that, but I'm just saying I don't know that as a man,
Yeah.
but I know that to be true. Um, I think this other one, fear of being abandoned by women, is a lot of like biological origins,
Hmm.
that, historically, like women were needed to keep the tribe going, keep the species going. So if there's no women, that we're not staying alive.
Hmm.
But I also think that there's a certain level, and I don't fully, I mean, I've read about it, I can say it, but I have to, if I'm honest, I don't feel I fully understand it. But there's something in the fact that like, young children are primarily surrounded by women,
Hmm.
caregivers, whether it's a mother, a grandmother, a nanny, an aunt. Most early childhood educators are women.
Hmm.
Right? So they're surrounded in the kind of like the bosom of womanhood, so to speak. And at some point, boys get taken out of there, whether it's to be with their dad or for sports, or the teachers become more and more male as you get older.
Hmm.
And there's something about that, like being ripped out of that, that I feel never, somehow it doesn't heal, or something happens that then later on impacts how they relate to adult women or their primary partner as a woman.
Hmm.
It connects to that. I don't fully, I wish I understood it more, but um, we all also, for example, like women from the time they're little girls, they stay in that sphere. Like, so if you have, let's say you have twins, a boy and a girl, and their parents are together, at some point, like it's okay for like the little girl, as she gets older, she stays with her mother, and then she's in middle school, she goes out shopping with her mother, she does these
Hmm.
activities together. At some point, for a boy to be around his mother a lot becomes embarrassing.
Hmm.
Right? Like, I don't know the age, it probably depends on the culture and the community, but let's say that mother walked her twins to school. At some point, usually the boy before the girl is going to say, "Don't kiss me in front of school.
Okay.
Don't give me a good day." Right? Maybe he's third grade, maybe he's fifth grade.
Uh-huh.
The girl won't care as much. I mean, girls
Yeah.
will care too, like, "Ma," but the boy he'll blush and he'll get embarrassed. He's like, "Don't do that."
Okay.
And then
I don't
even,
have sons, so
oh, I'm the opposite.
I
I
didn't.
only have sons,
Oh
so we
yeah,
should
I only
talk.
have daughters, so
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah.
okay, I didn't raise that, so
Yeah, like if you would
interesting.
not be able to walk a boy, I mean, I taught fifth grade. A fifth grade mother would not be able to kiss her son in front of
Mm,
like, or maybe even hug him goodbye. It'd be like, no.
okay.
And then even older, right? Like, I'm envious because I only have boys, who I love, but like the daughter relationship, like even in high school and college, even though the age they go through, like I can't stand my parents, whatever, but
Mhm.
even within that space, if a girl comes home from college and she's like, I'm so excited, I'm gonna come home and get into bed with my mom one night. We're just gonna hang out and talk and catch up and watch a movie and eat popcorn. That's like a normal thing, right?
Right,
We
right.
might listen,
Nobody's gonna raise an eyebrow.
but if a college age boy says, I can't wait to come home and hang out with my mom in bed and we're gonna watch a movie and talk, like we're like a mesh man,
Yes, yeah.
right? So some point boys are forced because of masculinity to disconnect from their mothers and those, even if they're still close with their moms, but they
Mm-hmm.
can't show this dependency.
Mm-hmm.
And I think somewhere, I don't fully understand, but somewhere in there that disconnect, and also then also, often then they'll go off and do activities with their dad more than with their mom at a certain age.
Right.
And so there's something in there that I think connects to that, and then comes back to this fear of being abandoned by women.
Uh-huh.
You
And
know,
you're talking about that, like that's not organically necessarily coming from internal of that boy. It's being kind of pushed onto him
yeah,
before
yeah,
he would be ready.
correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's a societal, I think it's a cultural thing that we put onto boys,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think that if you had I don't know if it's like we could create a laboratory that that stuff didn't happen, boys would still show joy when they're and jump up and down and be silly,
Mm-hmm.
when they're older, when they're
Yeah, yeah.
and like I remember, uh, I was in Jerusalem. I was in rabbinical school in Israel, and so it was mostly Israelis, and then some people from not from Israel, like English speaking countries. But the Israelis who were in the school had it was very religious. They were not exposed to media, TV, like they didn't even have smartphones.
Mm.
And I remember watching these two guys who were probably like 15. They walked out of the dorm in front of me, and they were holding hands. My first thought was like, what's going on here? And
Uh-huh.
and then I realized like they don't associate holding hands with sex or love, romantic love. It's an
Uh-huh.
expression of care or love, actual love,
Yeah.
like friendship. But in my mind, because I grew up in America, boys holding hands is not a thing you do with your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Girls can hold hands or
Right.
like hold each other, right? But boys can't.
Uh-huh.
So again, that's an example, I think, of like society placing masculine laws,
Right.
masculinity. And I think that one, for example, is like homophobia is like the fear of being like women, really,
Mm-hmm.
which is the last thing here, a fear of being feminine. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think society creates it. And I think it's one of the ways that this comes out, the fear of being abandoned by women is like men in some ways being hyper vigilant. Is she upset with me?
Mm.
Like any moment, is she upset? Even though often I know they come through as obtuse, some men come through as obtuse, not knowing if she's upset. Like she could be standing with a knife in her hand and they're like, it's for dinner, honey. Like I'm exaggerating, but I
Yeah.
think there is this fear constantly of I don't want to upset my wife. It may not
Mm.
always land like that because I know women sometimes don't experience that. They like, oh, I wish you were
Mm-hmm.
more sensitive to me.
Right.
Um, Yeah, and I also think like men, I meet a lot of men, I don't know if you have this with your clients, who are really good with conflict. Like clients of mine who work in construction or are contractors, they're dealing with like tough stuff, or
Mm-hmm.
litigators, or they're bosses of companies and they can handle conflict, but when it comes to with their wife or their
Mm-hmm.
girlfriend, they can't.
Yeah.
Become paralyzed. And I think there's something in that, like, well, of course, it's closer, it activates their nervous system much deeper than the work conflict, but it's something about this fear of like, if she'll leave me, if she doesn't approve of
Mm-hmm.
me, how that
Mm-hmm.
lands differently than, you know, these guys are mad at me at work and I don't really care.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I have worked with clients who, are successful in their work and have a lot of great managerial skills and all those great skills that have served them very well in their career. But their spouse is saying, you're not my manager. You're not my
Right.
boss. Like, don't
Right.
do that. Don't manage me. And they just are like abandoned then because I don't even know what to do then.
Yeah. 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 And I think that that kind of plays into the last one. It's like the fear of being feminine is because women are perceived as being less powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, don't manage me, don't do this because like I'm more powerful than you, even if and this, a lot of these things are so subconscious that even men who are thoughtful, I don't know if I call them like pro-feminist, like meaning like care about women's feelings, value women, respectful to women,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so ingrained in our culture. Um, and I think, like I said, that there's such a disconnect between having these fears and feeling them
Mm-hmm.
that they're not aware of them.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when we work with clients who have eroticized rage in the sexual addiction betrayal world, right? Like most of those men are like, I'm not angry at her. I'm not angry at women. Like they're not, these are not men who are like bulls in a china shop, like
Yeah.
yelling at women on the street. These aren't the
Right.
guys who
Or
have these like
using the degrading terms about women. Yeah.
correct, right. They're not. They're actually the opposite. They're usually the people pleasers
Mm-hmm.
who are stuffing all their feelings. They're not the guys who have like these like Facebook rage, rants
Right.
about women. They're not.
Yeah.
And I heard, I think it was from Alex Katahakis or someone recently, like that eroticized rage is seen from the actions, not the feelings, because the feelings are so exiled. They're so divorced
Mm-hmm.
from the rage. They're not going to resonate with it. You have to say this action, right? Like
Right.
when you just did this like right in front of her or in your home, which is really like saying screw you, that's a rageful act. And like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that they can see it.
Yeah.
And so I think with these fears also, like they don't see that the fear is there. Sometimes some of them will, oh, and especially the real people pleasers, like, I don't want to tell her. I don't want to like,
Uh-huh.
I don't want to tell her that I spilled in the car or something. I don't know what, but they're really disconnected from it, which makes it hard to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
so I find
Yeah.
like if you say to certain men are going to be like all over it, like, oh yeah, I'm terrified of her. I don't know. But a lot of men would be like, I'm not scared of my wife. What are you talking about? And so I try to use like other language to help them to start to identify it. Because
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the ways to start to work is like the language we use always makes a difference.
Yeah. Well, and why would they be afraid of women who are inferior, right? That doesn't make sense with them on some level because
Yeah,
that is not the message they've gotten their whole life growing up as a male in America.
right. Right. Well, right. Going back to the masculinity, I mean, that messaging starts when you like you said with that example of the little boy and girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
When boys are told, be a man, don't cry, don't be a girl, like
Mm-hmm.
that already others girls,
Yes.
others women to somebody
Yep.
who's not don't be this, they're down here. That's the messaging in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so once somebody's not your equal, they're less than, then it's easier to not treat them well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, it's only another step from like you're not an equal, you're an object. Then it's one more step, you're a sexual object. And
Yeah.
it's another step like I don't have to protect your heart. I can trample on your heart and do what I want. And then it's another step to like domestic
Uh-huh.
violence.
Yeah. I when you were giving your presentation, I had written down kind of a question that I never asked you, but I'm going to ask you now. Do you feel like sometimes in the sex addiction realm that I mean, maybe outside of the sex addiction realm as well, but the objectification of women is also a way of avoiding the fear or the inadequacy they feel,
Yeah.
just the, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's, if you're just a body part or body parts, I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to deal with all the multi-layered emotional complexities of a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one reason, for example, right? Like why, some men can have an erection watching pornography or, paying for sex or having a hookup versus an emotionally complex, meaningful relationship
Mm-hmm.
where you have to navigate like, I'm attracted to you, even though 15 minutes ago you yelled at me to pick my socks up off the floor.
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you have to navigate all the complexities of the human heart. That takes
Right.
a lot more emotional labor than I'm just going to look at this image, or I'm going to just meet with this person who doesn't have any, that's why like an affair partner or a sex worker, like they don't have all those layers of like carpool
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
or who's doing Costco runs or whatever,
Yeah.
and or years of resentment that go up and down in any long-term relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to learn how to navigate, have the emotional agility to navigate all that stuff and still maintain desire and arousal and
Mm-hmm.
with that versus this. And we see that with younger clients today, not just because of internet pornography, but even just technology,
Yeah.
that don't, by the time they're in their early 30s, they haven't had as many vulnerable moments or long-term relationships
Right.
because of that. It's easier. Like ask someone out through a text versus having to go to the girl. I mean, when I was in middle school, I had to write it down on a note and fold it up and then give it to her and see
Right.
if she wanted, and then wait to see if she wanted to go roller skating with me Friday night. It was
Mm-hmm.
terrifying,
Yeah.
or have my friend ask her, but I'm hiding
Right.
behind it. Whatever
Yep.
the age appropriate risk is. And so
Mm-hmm.
those are where we build those muscles to take emotional risks
Mm-hmm.
later on, like to
Yeah.
say in a marriage, like, hey, I'm really lonely. Or
Right.
hey, or even the risk of saying, do you want to be sexual tonight? And
Mm-hmm.
maybe he or she's going to say no, like that's a risk.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And one that we often, I mean, there's jokes about that, like, oh, I have a headache. There, like, we make light of that instead of really having more in-depth conversations about what's happening here and the risk and the vulnerability that people are feeling in those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the questions I often ask couples, or sometimes it's an individual client too, is like, how do you initiate sex? Like as a couple, like what
Mm-hmm.
happens? And it's very rare that someone will say, I turn to my partner and say, hey, do you want to, whatever word they use, have sex, make love? First of all, I'd say 60% or higher say funny words and like euphemisms
Uh-huh. Yeah.
instead, because there's such a discomfort. But often it'll be nonverbal cues like, oh, when she wears a certain t-shirt, I know that she wants to. Or,
Mm.
I mean, most women will say when he hugs me, that means he
Mm-hmm.
wants to, because unless he's wanting sex, which is also then that
Right.
speaks volumes about what's going on. But I think it's a really, like questions like that I'd ask clients also that tell me about things like their attachment styles, like what was bedtime like as a child, what was dinner time like as a child, are so rich with information. And I think for couples, like how does sex start?
Mm-hmm.
It's such a good question, and to teach them how to be more vulnerable and to yeah, like it's so the example you gave, like, oh, she has a headache. It's the pathologizing of women wanting to have emotional connection before sexual connection.
Mm-hmm.
So because they're not getting it, so now it gets framed in the therapeutic office or in society as like, she doesn't want to have sex, what's wrong with my wife?
Mm-hmm.
And
Or she's saying all he wants is sex.
right, right,
That's the only time he touches me. That's the only time
right,
he shows interest in me.
yeah. And so I usually say, like, what are you doing to make her want to have sex with you?
Yeah. Yes.
Like I even had a client recently who was using the words his wife is weaponizing sex. And I'm like, first of all, she's not weapon. I was seeing them as a couple. I'm like, she's
Uh-huh.
not weaponizing sex. If you have bad breath and she doesn't want to have sex with you, that's not weaponizing sex.
Right.
And so the same thing is like if she wants to connect in some way first, and
Mm-hmm.
you're not, and you're like 0 to 60, or you're expecting it, that's not really hot to her. And so
Right.
that's not weaponizing sex. That's just you're not making it interesting for her.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of being lazy,
Yeah.
which I think
Yeah.
a lot of
And
people.
and maybe entitled. There's a lot of male entitlement to sex, especially once they're married.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
not good sex. Entitled sex is never good sex.
No, I mean, yeah, it's like, if I go do the dishes because you yelled at me, it's also not doesn't feel so great that the dishes were done. Same thing,
Right.
like having something done because you feel pressured isn't gonna really create a long-term positive result.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So as you're navigating these conversations with couples or with individuals, I mean, do you feel like you can get them to be open to receiving what you're suggesting? And I mean, finding the right language is often important so
Yeah.
that nobody's feeling blamed or, uh, you know, pointing the finger at.
Yeah. So instead of saying like scared of your wife or fearful, I'll use like the word nervous.
Mm-hmm.
Are you nervous she'll be upset with you if you say what you want to say?
Yeah.
Are you, if you share your feelings authentically, are you nervous what will happen if you don't agree with her? Like, so that where they're able to get
Uh-huh.
anxious, which we know I think is fear a lot of the time. So that we're, those are so using words to help them. I would also say for men, I always say this, even though there's many people maybe listening who aren't familiar with it, but if it's someone familiar with 12-step recovery, and so in the 4-step inventory, most models of it have a fear inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone has done that work and I'm working with them as a client, they already have a framework about fear. So I
Mm-hmm.
can use that 4-step fear inventory as a model to talk about fear. So like
Yeah.
fear could be like fear of dying, but it could also be like fear of being judged by friends or fear of people thinking I'm not successful. It could be fear of my wife leaving me, fear of my
Mm-hmm.
wife controlling me. So like I can move them in through that
Yeah.
language.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I think helping them look at the costs of fear,
Mm-hmm.
like loneliness,
Yeah.
like because it causes you to pull away or to push away, usually push away sometimes, depression, conflict. So those are things I think that are helpful. Also using like internal family systems language with parts. So there's a part of me that's afraid. That feels much more comfortable to say than
Right.
I'm afraid. So I'll
Mm-hmm.
check, is there a part of you that's afraid to, let me just turn this off. That's afraid to tell your spouse how you honestly feel? Is there a part of you that's afraid to ask her for attention or ask her for affection or ask her for help?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, so I think parts language is a really good model for that. I think sometimes speaking to masculinity in a certain way, their masculinity parts of saying like, what if we embrace fear? Like, like they'll jump out of a plane to go skydiving to embrace fear, get in a
Mm-hmm.
boxing rink and mix it up, embrace fear, right? Like do scary things like that. So what if we learn to embrace fear in the relational world? Like be
Mm-hmm.
daredevils there and like and then also I'll use language like let's get curious about it, like teaching them that let's have a beginner's mind about fear
Yeah.
and so that things like that I think help. um what else? I think group therapy helps. This is one area like it's a great forum for men. Like I would introduce it as a topic in most men's groups and
Mm-hmm.
help them to see it, and then hearing other men get honest about it allows another person to hear
Mm-hmm.
their experience through the voice of another man and then think about it for themselves. And I also think another avenue into it is through parenting. Like, most men really want to be good dads, whether
Yeah.
it's to sons like I have or daughters like you have, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they want to be good dads. And so they're really, in their whatever, they're very thoughtful and it's a source of pride. And so think, bringing this into that, like, as they parent, and how do they want their sons to be? How do they want their daughters to be treated? And so,
Mm-hmm.
and then bringing them back to themselves,
Yeah.
and to like their relationships. Whenever somebody has children, I will often, sometimes they can have more compassion and more awareness for their child than
Mm-hmm.
for themselves. You know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Well,
I'm
and
sure.
there can also be some healing that happens as they are doing for their child what was not done for them.
Yeah,
There's also some healing in that.
yeah. And they're also less defensive. So it's like, I'm not going to change because my wife wants me. She's not controlling me, right? But
Mm-hmm.
when you say to them, like, what kind of man do you want your daughter to marry?
Yeah.
It's going to be like you. They're less defensive.
Right.
They don't get as, they don't, that's, I mean, I've gotten men to go to inpatient treatment with that versus
Hmm.
like your wife really wants and needs you to go. Like
Right.
she's not telling you what to do. I'm like, okay, the man that you are will be the greatest role model that your daughter or son ever have.
Hmm.
So what do you want to do about being that role model? Like this is going to help you and
Hmm.
help them.
Hmm.
I also will play this game. I think I mentioned before, like, is it, are you angry or are you scared? Is it anger or is
Yeah.
it
Yes.
fear? Yeah. Like give them a scenario like, first of all, use all these words that are synonyms for anger, like angry, pissed off, annoyed. These are usually the first. If you ask many men how they're feeling, these are the first answers,
Yes.
other
Yeah.
than fine or tired, right? Like,
Hmm.
and so, like, is this anger? Is this fear? Like, give a scenario. I don't know. Like, you are talking to your wife and she's looking at her phone and she's on her phone, and you're pissed off. Is it anger or is it fear? And like go a little deeper, like, well, I'm mad at it. Yeah, I'm mad at it, but her for it. But why am I mad at her? Oh, because I think maybe I'm not important enough. I'm scared I'm not important enough to her, or I'm scared she's texting her friends and that they're more important than me,
Hmm.
or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So like helping them, like, is what, and then always like whenever you're angry, like you look under the anger, you're gonna
Right.
find something hurt or fear or something like that. So
Hmm.
I think that's a good way to do it. And I think I said this when we were in Phoenix also, like most of the work I would do on this stuff is for the men to do. It's their
Hmm.
work to do. But I do think there's a space to talk about it with their partners or their spouses or one on one or in couples, because not because I want the women to do more emotional labor for the guy. That's like
Right.
I want the opposite. I want him to do it. But if they can understand that some of these reactions or stances or attitudes are really fear versus just being a jerk or
Hmm.
however else it may land, it might give them, it might, I'm not okay any bad behavior, of course, but it might make it easier to be like, oh, he's responding this way because he's scared. Let me speak to that fear
Hmm.
versus he's just angry or he's doing, pushing me away or he's avoidant or he's a narcissist or what all the
Hmm.
labels that we
Yeah.
use. So I think there is a room, and I found actually at that symposium that there were some therapists and some women came up just as women who said like, this is so helpful to reframe it, like not to ask the woman to change anything, but just to have a better understanding of what's happening in the dynamic.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
many times, I mean, I'm not going to here explain how women think, but let me tell you, little lady. But like, how many times are betrayed partners baffled by a reactive reaction from a
Hmm.
man, right? Like they're like,
Right.
wait, what? I'm here hurt. You've done these things to me. I'm telling you my feelings and you're mad at me. I'm the bad one. Like, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
it's just adds insult to injury
Hmm.
or injury on top of injury. So I think that sometimes being able to have that space to say like, oh, they're having this reaction and it's fear versus something else, just being an idiot or a jerk,
Hmm.
um, can really can help it to feel different.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I do have female clients that I work with who will report like they don't know why their spouse is staying. They don't know why they're there because they're not feeling the love. They're not feeling chosen, maybe, or that
Yeah.
the relationship is worth what he's trying to do.
Right.
But I think that's
Yeah.
a helpful reframe.
Yeah. And also, I mean, if they're in a relationship where there's betrayal, they're already wounded of not feeling chosen. So of course
Hmm.
they're wondering, like, he chose this other person, or he chose these
Right.
other people, or he chose these other images and not me. They're already feeling rejected.
Hmm.
So then if he's not showing the vulnerability, which is again the part of the fear of being entrapped, I
Hmm.
can't show just how much I want to be here because that would be too scary. Um, then they are confused, and like I took a group of men away on a retreat, and they did a lot of work, and one of the guys told me that his wife, who was like, it was a bit coupled with betrayal. She picked him at the airport, and her first question was like, "Do you still want to be with me?" Like she was worried that he had healed to
Mhm.
this level that now he didn't want to be with her. Like it broke my heart to hear
Mhm.
that that's what she was sitting with. I, so I think that, and especially when the person is being met with defensiveness or distance or not knowing, not being really vulnerable or showing dependency. And
Mhm.
the one time moment where you see the dependency pop out is when the wife is finally like, all right, I'm done.
Mhm.
Like if they're in a
Yep.
session and she's like, I am done, that's when that all those walls that mask the fear will crumble. Or when we, like we said before, when there's been discoveries and here's their exits, they can leave and now they're fighting
Mhm.
to stay. And so I try to help betrayed partners see that the fact that they're investing, that their partner is investing all this time and work and emotional labor is because they want to be with you. It's a sign, it's because of that.
Mhm.
But I think sometimes their wounds are so great that they might flip it to like, oh, he's just scared.
Mhm.
He's scared to leave. He doesn't want to have to deal with it, right? Like they're the wounds of I'm not enough and I or that get created through betrayal or deepened through betrayal if they were there before will cause their mind to find like a reason why they, even though they're doing all this work, they still don't want to
Yeah.
be with me, right?
Mhm.
Which is
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah. It is painful for them and to, I mean, often I think partners can feel like they have no power there with their partner.
Yeah. And I mean, I see this with couples all the time where, we were talking before about like she doesn't want to have sex. He's pressuring her for sex. Each one feels the other one has all the power, right? The guy
Mhm.
feels so disempowered. Like she holds all the power when we have sex. She's the gatekeeper. Da, da, da. And she's like, you just have to be nice to me. You have all the power. What are you
Right.
talking about? Like, if you could just talk nice to me, or you could like show interest in me besides just like, hey, honey, come here. Then,
Mhm.
like, and so like it's so fascinating because they both feel that the other one has all the power. And so like, what's up with that? Like, talk about like
Right.
it's like a double-edged sword, or I don't know what the right term is, like a psychological, it's the lens that they're feeling it through.
Mhm. Yeah.
Something's not true if they're both, I mean, they're both true actually, right? Like they're
Right.
both true, but they're really in this very separate space if they're both thinking the other person holds all the cards.
Right. And they have no way of influencing.
Influencing, right? Right. Like I'll tell you, I just saw a guy yesterday. Like, if you make her feel heard, you will probably be having sex. That's
Mhm.
because she said that every session for months. I just need you to hear it.
Right.
Like it's not like I divined it. I'm not
Yeah.
certainly no
Sometimes
genius.
clients are like, "You're amazing." And you're like, "Okay."
Right. Right. And they can hear it sometimes from us when they can't hear it from their spouse.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, so I just think, I don't know, like I think that a lot of the behaviors that we look at that come up in some of these couples that are going through such a painful time when there's been betrayal and discovery and gaslighting and entitlement and all the, integrity abuse and all these things, um, underneath them, it's not the only thing that's a factor, right? But one of the factors that's shaping how the the responsiveness is not good or not ideal. It's defensive, it's
Mhm.
minimizing, it's blaming, is these fears.
Yeah.
And also I think that for some people, even it's what fuels some sexual acting out, right? Like I'm scared to be trapped in a relationship. And if I put all my eggs in your basket, you could crush all of me,
Mhm.
all my heart. So I'm gonna like give some over here and give some over here, and then I'm emotionally
Right.
safe. It's a form of
Uh-huh.
emotional safety. So I think it plays out in a lot of the stuff that we see with our clients.
Yeah. Yeah, where just
And
vulnerability has not been safe, maybe for either of them.
probably, right?
Yeah. And
Probably.
now they're
Yeah.
having to try to navigate that with each other in this midst of pain and betrayal and not seeing each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, I want to say one other thing about it, which is that, and it helps me to understand myself or other men and dynamics with couples that I work with. And it feels a little more nuanced than just saying that the man is avoidant or a narcissist
Hmm.
or shut down or all these other labels. Like, I think that like we miss when I know why people search for labels,
Hmm.
it helps them to then know what to do. And
Right.
even as clinicians, we often want to label something before sitting longer in the ambiguity of not knowing what this is. Because as soon as we label it, like, okay, now I know what to do. But whether
Hmm.
it's a spouse or a clinician, I think there's a danger in rushing into labels that maybe only address part of the problem or the surface level of the problem, right? Like narcissism
Hmm.
does exist, avoidant attachment does exist. But if I just say it's that, then I'm really not going to look at the other things that are there.
Hmm.
I'm going to stop looking and being curious, and I'm going to say, oh, I know the whole problem, and I'm probably not going to be able to treat it as well.
Right. Right. We're going to stop asking as many questions because we think we know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point too. I think we are as a culture quick to put labels on, and often we are misapplying labels and we're misinformed about what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we get cases of sex addiction when it's not sex addiction,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And if you're in the substance abuse part of the profession, you get people being labeled alcoholic when they had a problem, but they weren't an alcoholic, but they had a
Hmm.
problem. So I think, um, and especially with young adults, I feel very protective of them when they're
Yeah.
20, teens, 20s, even 30s. And if they get slapped with a label,
Hmm.
it can stay for life.
Right.
And then it's so like how many people then have, then it affects their identity. Like, oh, I'm bipolar or I'm an addict
Hmm.
and it can actually be instead of helping them to get healing and help, it becomes a source of shame.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that there's not a role. I want to be clear that of course there's a
Right.
role, right? But
Yeah.
I think it's like when in my practice with the staff, I'm always like, when we have group supervision, like, oh, it's this. I'm like, stop rushing to like,
Right.
let's stay in the assessment longer. Let's be more curious. Let's look deeper and um, try to get as wide a lens as we can versus a very narrow lens.
Hmm. Yeah. I think some of that is insurance driven.
Yeah.
Even if you're not
Yes.
accepting insurance, like you have to have the label to bill on the first session. And that's not a good assessment. We just met this person. We can't even ask all the questions we would have in that first session. And so,
Right.
I think there's a lot of things that drive that rush to define or rush to put a label on it and rush to figure things out. I think some of that is just, we live in a society now where information is just available at our fingertips. I tell my kids
Yeah.
like I had to go to an encyclopedia and figure out
What's
where
that?
right? They're just like, I'm like, you don't get it. Like
Yeah.
everything was slower because it just was.
Yeah. 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 And another example of this is I think somebody goes to an inpatient program for whatever cause, addiction, mental health, whatever. And as they're being admitted, they get like a psychiatric evaluation.
Hmm.
And then that label, whatever it says there, will stick with them.
Yeah.
Even, and not just in the treatment there, but in their mind and how they see themselves. And like, well, maybe you are depressed or maybe you are bipolar, but you're also, if you're going into an inpatient treatment program, you're probably at one of the lowest points of your life.
Right.
So how do we know that this is an accurate assessment of how
Hmm.
you are typically when like you just did probably one of the most maybe courageous, but also probably shameful things of your life of whatever brought you into treatment.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that, because I've seen people just feel so stigmatized by the report, or then of course, like the spouse wants the evaluation And it's done
Mm-hmm.
the first day the guy's in treatment or the person's in treatment. And it's like, now this is how they look at their spouse from now on, which is also stigmatizing and damaging.
Right.
And
Yeah. Well, Gary, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate the conversation and your willingness to present this to professionals. What was like you mentioned some of the women, the clinicians that came up to you afterwards. What was the feedback after you presented? Was it any different?
Well, I was glad that nobody came up and said they hated it. Although those people usually don't come up, they just write bad reviews on the internet.
Yeah.
It was positive. Like I had a bunch of clinicians, this is at the ITAP symposium where there's people trained in sex addiction and betrayal trauma. And I had a bunch of clinicians come up who said they work with a lot of betrayed partners and they thought this would be helpful as a framework for the betrayed partner to like, again, like not as a label, but to framework to understand and see what their partner is going through and experiencing and some of their behaviors and reactions.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I would say that a significant amount of women came up and said, "Oh, now I understand things that I experienced in my own relationships."
Mm.
Like when certain behaviors, like, oh, now it clicked again a little more. Maybe it made a little more sense of why he acted this way or why he still acts this way or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And almost every man I've ever spoken to about this, clinician or not, it resonates. Kind of the example that you gave what you said happened for you at the beginning. Like, I mean, it was curiosity, like, oh, what's this topic, right? But I think there's something in the title, which I already forgot what it was.
Why are men so afraid of women?
Yeah, that like there's a truth in it, like that women hear, like, like, yeah, of course, it's not to minimize women's fear of men, but like there's a truth in it. Like they've been the recipients of the brunt of the behaviors that this kind of is speaking to, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah. So that's why are they so afraid of women? They have all this power.
Uh-huh.
They earn more, they have physically more power, right? Like, so then why are they? And I've also experienced it in different ways. And then I think with men for sure, like it's something that they don't understand
Mm-hmm.
about themselves typically.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking of several years ago, I had just mentioned to my husband that there were things going on for him. And I just said, you should go to therapy. Like most of our marriage, I've gone to therapy. And I think you've benefited from me going to therapy, but I think you need to go to therapy. We just had this conversation. I wasn't mad. I wasn't upset. We just had the conversation. And then it was like on a Friday night. And then we probably watched a show or we did whatever we did on that Friday night. And we wake up the next morning and he's like, I did not sleep well. And I'm like, oh, really? Why? And he's like, are you going to leave me? And I was like, what? Where is this coming from? And he said, well, you asked me to go to therapy. And I was like, I just thought it would be helpful with everything that's going on. And like, I was blown away that that's where he went to and that it like kept him up at night and he wasn't sleeping well. And I was just like, I mean, it's a little surprising that knowing I'm a therapist, you didn't ever think I would ask you to go to therapy.
Yeah. His response is, I think that I had a feeling that's what you're going to say. I mean, first of all, I have to give him credit because I think many men would get defensive right away, right? Instead of not just be up all night, but they would be like, what's the matter? I'm not good enough for you. Same thing, but in a defensive way. Like his was more, what you're describing was much more like painfully introspective and fearful.
Yes.
But so it didn't surprise me. It surprised me that he didn't get defensive, but it didn't surprise me how he internalized it. But you're 100% right. Like, I mean, being married to a therapist is not an easy task because for either person, because the person who's not, and I have a lot of clients who are like couples where one person is a therapist, and I always try to like validate the non-therapist partner of like, you're in a room with two therapists, like, oh man, we're gonna keep you safe. Don't worry. Like,
yeah.
And so but it is funny that he never thought of it,
right?
Like,
never crossed his mind that he might have to do that.
or they're like, like if he joined a CrossFit gym or he's into biking, he'd want you to go biking with him, or he'd talk about the
Yeah.
gym, want you to go with him. But the thing that you're spending the majority of your working hours doing,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And it was interesting when he started therapy, he mentioned it to the kids, like, yeah, I'm going to therapy. And they were all like, oh, yeah. And he was like, what is that?
right.
And I said, well, okay, wait a minute. All of us have been in therapy at different times.
Mm,
So I don't think it's judgment. And they also know your family and
mm,
they're observant. So like it's not a judgment. It's just,
right. Mm,
that's okay. It's okay.
mm, yeah.
So okay, again, thank you so much. I
It
appreciate
was
your
my pleasure.
time and the
Yeah, this is
conversation.
wonderful. Thank you for
Yeah,
inviting me. I really
yeah.
appreciate it, Jackie.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Have a good weekend. We'll see
All right,
you.
you too. Take care.
Bye-bye. Hey guys, I'm just popping back on. I was so enjoying that podcast episode with Gary that I completely forgot to end with my typical ending. And I was not even aware of that until I was editing the episode and getting it ready to publish. I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. And if you found yourself thinking, Gary seems very warm and genuine and thoughtful, wise, insightful, I thought the same thing. I thought the same thing when he presented at Symposium. And I thought that when we were recording. Also, one of the things that I appreciated about Gary when he was presenting at Symposium was he started out his presentation. I was going to say this in the episode, but I forgot. So he started out his presentation with, it's a PowerPoint. And so he had up on the screen the quote by Margaret Atwood that says, and this is according to research, that men's biggest fear when it comes to women is that they will reject them. Women's biggest fear is that they will kill them. And so he started out his presentation, put that up there, and called attention to it, said, I wanted to call attention to this quote by Margaret Atwood. And I wanted to put that up because that's a real thing. I'm not trying to diminish that or dismiss that. He's like, that is a very sad reality. He said, but I think this is an interesting perspective that as clinicians, we should be aware of, and it will benefit the work that we do with our clients and ultimately benefit our clients. And so I appreciated that. He was basically saying, this is the lane I'm in. There are other valid lanes, and I'm aware of those and I'm acknowledging those. But for my presentation, this is the lane that my presentation covers. And at the end of his presentation, he was taking questions from the clinicians in the room. And one of the clinicians raised their hand and they asked, how does this differ among different cultures? And again, this is where when you're doing a presentation, you don't know what kind of questions you're going to get. And so I feel like you get a glimpse of who they genuinely are as a person because they haven't prepared for those questions. They're answering them in real time. And that's coming from who they are and how they are. And it says a lot about them in a short period of time, I feel like. And his response was also very warm, very genuine, respectful, thoughtful, but also he didn't think about it. He answered and said, I don't know. I know how it applies to my culture and the population of clients that I work with, but I don't know enough to say how it applies to different cultures or if it's different among different cultures. He said, if anybody has that perspective or has thought about that during the presentation, I'd love to have that conversation and hear about their thoughts on that. And a couple things I thought. We don't have enough people who can say, I don't know. I know what it looks like for this population or my culture and the clients that I serve. I know what it looks like for them. But I don't know. And I'm not even going to try to guess. He wasn't trying to guess and make assumptions about what that looked like. And he was also open and said, if you have any thoughts on that, if your culture is different and it differs a lot or a little, I'd love to have a conversation. And at symposium, I thought, wow, this is a very warm and inviting because of his genuineness, stayed in the lane that he had prepared to present, which we don't have enough people who will say, I know about this. I've been talking about this with clients. I've been looking at this for me, myself as a male. And so I'm speaking to these experiences and how that's gone when I've talked to clients about that. But he wasn't claiming that he knew more than he did. And I think in our world where a lot of people have a lot of opinions, there's no shortage right now, at least in America, of opinions. I think that's a great model that he set of here's what I know, and I don't know some things, but I'd be open for a conversation. I'd love to hear about it. And I felt like it also came across clearly in this episode. I'm also going to take a moment here to say, if you're listening to this, whatever platform you're on, and you haven't subscribed, please hit subscribe, give the podcast a rating, drop a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And if you subscribe, it is free to subscribe. You'll be notified when new content is released. The podcast is available on all of the platforms that podcasts are available in audio form. And the video recording is always uploaded to YouTube if you wanted to watch that. Subscribing, commenting really does help the algorithm, and I appreciate it as well. At the end of this episode, I want to remind you that your story matters. Remember, there's something meaningful in every chapter. Don't wait to share your story until it's finished. Until next time, Jackie.